Well, hello, and welcome to episode 115 of Drink the Movies. I'm Brian here, as always, with Michaela. And Michaela, our Oscar watch is upon us. We are ticking movies off left and right. And this week we're talking about another one that you had to tick off. I watched it back. I think I watched it the night that it came out. I was very excited to see this one, but you hadn't had a chance to watch it until recently. So what did we do? We picked up a six-pack of Peroni. We sat down and we watched the new telling of Guillermo del Toro's Pinocchio.
We sure did. And I have to say, Pinocchio as a whole, it's kind of an interesting story, right? I mean, most people have seen the Disney version of it, but there are a ton of other versions out there, and some of them are much darker than others. So probably the reason why I didn't watch it opening day was because I didn't know if it was going to be appropriate for kids, which sounds weird because it's kind of a children's story, but it's kind of not too. So yeah, I'm glad we were able to watch this one together. We did open some Peroni, but we also made the most amazing Pinocchio cocktail. I mean, this one, people of all listeners, I mean, y'all need to make this cocktail because I remember taking the first sip and being like, "Holy moly, this is why we do this."
Yeah, absolutely. So this is kind of a recurring theme. Last year, we also covered an animated film that was nominated for Oscar for Best Animated Picture when we talked about Encanto, and this one is the same, Guillermo del Toro's Pinocchio, nominated for Best Animated Feature Film. So we definitely wanted to get together and chat about it, and yeah, definitely made up a good cocktail for it. So why don't we do this, Michaela? Let's take a quick break, and we will be right back to whip up that cocktail. And make sure you stay tuned in, ladies and gentlemen out there, because this is a good one. We'll be right back.
This is great. This week's cocktail comes from WineDharma.com, and it takes its name from our favorite puppet wooden boy who steals Geppetto's heart. It's called the Pinocchio. And I remember when we were looking at this, we were like, this is either going to be really great or it's going to be totally awful. Because when we were looking at the different ingredients, we could not decide if we thought these would mesh well or not. And so this is definitely, I think, a more involved cocktail. This is not what I would say a Tuesday night cocktail is going to be. But I definitely think you should just listen and listen to our recommendations if you can't find certain things, because all of these pieces of the recipe play a really important part to the flavor profile. So you're not going to want to miss it.
Yeah, for sure. And it looks a little bit more daunting than it was. I mean, really, you only have to make kind of two ingredients, and the one is just a honey simple syrup. So that's pretty easy to make. So really, it's just the one. And yeah, this cocktail, it came together. It was amazing. And very excited to talk about it. So let's run through the ingredients here for everyone real quick. So into your shaker tin, you're going to be putting 1.5 ounces of gin, an eighth of a teaspoon roughly of some crushed up pink peppercorn. This calls for some lavender. Now, there's a couple of options here in terms of your lavender. So lavender is like the little bush where they take the little buds of that and they use it to make perfume and soap and things in southern France. It's very beautiful. It's very perfumey. We used lavender bitter, just a drop or two of that because we had that. You can also find lavender like in some tea blends, things like that. So you might want to try that. I don't know if like your flower shop would have like some dried lavender, or you might be able to find it at like a specialty or health food store. So you're going to put in just a little bit of that. Like we said, we used a couple dashes of the lavender bitters and then a quarter teaspoon of turmeric into the shaker tin. And then this is where it's going to get a little bit more involved, Michaela.
Yeah. So to that, you are going to add 1/2 ounce of honey syrup. And we talked a little bit about how to make honey syrup. That is real simple. It is honey and water, and you could do equal parts or 2 parts of honey, 1 part water, depending on how sweet you want it to be. And you reduce that down until it turns into kind of a simple syrup. And then you cool that. So 1/2 ounce of that. And then 1/2 ounce of lemon juice. We always go back and forth with our lemon juice. We try to have fresh lemons in the house. I really recommend for this particular drink to go ahead and have fresh lemon juice. But if you have the kind that comes in a bottle, that's cool too. And then this 1/2 ounce of mango syrup that sounds delicious, and it was real delicious. But that took a little bit more doing than what I'm used to. So Brian, how did you make the mango syrup?
Yeah, so on WineDharma.com, they kind of tell you that you can take a mango and cut that up and strain it through like a sieve and let it sit overnight, and then add some simple syrup into it. That sounded like a lot of work to me. So what I did was I went to the grocery store and they had some fresh pressed mango juice just up there in like the front section where they're starting to carry a lot of fresh pressed juices and things like that. So I grabbed a little bottle of that and then I took it and I boiled it down. Just a little bit by about half, roughly. I took a cup, got it down to about a half a cup, and then I added in just a little bit of simple syrup to that. So it made it kind of sweet, kind of unctuous, and it kind of concentrated that mango flavor just a little bit. To where it's a little bit thicker than your regular juice, but that was all I did. I just simmered it for a little bit, just reduced it down, and then like I said, added just a little bit of sugar into that to sweeten it up just a touch, and then you're good to go. Just put that back into the bottle or into a jar, stick it in the fridge, and you're going to be ready to mix up quite a few of these cocktails because a little bit goes a long way, and this stuff is delicious. So, like I mentioned, you throw all of that into your shaker tin, you shake it with some ice, you strain it out into a rocks-filled ice glass. You can take a lemon peel and kind of express that over the top, and then drop that in and garnish, and then sip away and enjoy. And Michaela, we didn't know about the Pinocchio cocktail before, but I have to say, of all the cocktails we've made 115-ish cocktails now. This might have been one of the fanciest, most luxurious ones I ever drank. I felt like I was at like a really nice restaurant with a really great cocktail menu, and I ordered this, and they brought it to me, and I was blown away. I love
Yeah.
this.
Yeah. No, this was absolutely beautiful. This, I mean, there are drinks that we make that we're like, that's good, but this is a beautifully crafted cocktail. It did feel fancy AF. It was very, very beautiful and fancy. I felt very bougie. The mango syrup. We have got to next week on the lobby bar. We should figure out what else to do with this mango syrup because it's so good.
Just drink it from the bottle.
Just
Just drink the syrup is
right.
fine.
Oh my gosh. I'll just give myself diabetes. It's fine. It's so like in English in England we would say Moorish, like it's like you said, it's super sumptuous and it's just with the turmeric, you think it's going to be really strange. And it is, but it's so perfect. I mean, this has the perfect level of acidity mixed with the perfect level of sweetness. It coats your tongue really beautifully. The mouthfeel is great. It's boozy enough, but it's not like knock you over boozy, so you can have a few of these if you want. I'll tell you, by the end of the first drink I really wanted another just because it tasted so good.
Mhm.
And yeah, this was absolutely not what you thought it was, which is very symbolic of Guillermo del Toro's Pinocchio, because you think that it's going to be one thing, and then you go deeper into watching the film, and it turns out to be something that is really sumptuous and beautiful and very well balanced, and not at all what you were expecting. So I think you're right. I think this is definitely going to go in our top 10 when we do our year recap. This
Mhm.
is going to be number one, I think, on the list of surprises from a cocktail perspective this year. I really challenge and encourage all of our listeners to go and make this and give it a shot because number one, you can absolutely make this cocktail. This is looks really fancy and bougie, but it is an every man's cocktail. If I can make it, anybody can make it, and we made it, and it was perfect.
We made it and we drank it. Yeah, it was really good. We made ours with gin, of course, as it's mentioned there. We made a vodka one for your husband who doesn't appreciate gin. We also thought this would be really good with like a silver tequila, Blanco tequila. Would be really good in this one too. So definitely give this one a try. And if you're having trouble tracking down the mango, maybe you want to go a little bit simpler, Michaela. So if you're looking for a good Pinocchio mocktail or cocktail, we mentioned that we were having some Peroni on this. So what can you do? You can take some Italian sparkling lemonade. I've got one right here from San Remo. Just an Italian sparkling lemonade. You can add that to some Peroni. You can make a traditional shandy, I believe is what they're called pretty much all around the world, except for in Germany, they call them a Radler. But shandy is really good. And you could totally make a mocktail version of a shandy by combining the lemonade with another sparkling like Italian soda or a French soda or even like an American. There's all these fancy sodas now that are
Yeah.
coming. So you could definitely do that. I made one with the lemonade and a blood orange. It was really delicious, and just kind of the couple of ingredients there. So grab that. That's a nice kind of easy way to get a good cocktail or a good mocktail. And while you're watching Pinocchio, and you might have some kids watching along with you. We did not. This one takes a little bit of a turn for darker stories, but as Guillermo del Toro said when he accepted the Golden Globe for Best Animated Feature Film, this movie is for kids, but they just might need you to kind of explain some things to them. And yeah, couldn't agree more. So why don't we do this, Michaela? We've got our drink made. We're gonna go make like another like 4 or 5 of these to get into this thing for sure. So we're gonna take a quick break. We will mix up a couple of those, and we'll be right back to talk about this week's film, Pinocchio.
Spoiler warning for Guillermo del Toro's Pinocchio. If you've not yet seen this film, that's okay because it just came out. But we are going to talk about all the things, and it's different than some of the other Pinocchios you may have seen. So you should definitely watch it or press pause. Go make yourself up a Pinocchio cocktail because that is amazing.
Do
And
that.
while you're
Yeah.
sipping that, go watch the movie. It is available on Netflix now. And you can come back and we can chat about all things Pinocchio.
That's right. Yeah, absolutely. And my favorite part about movies being on Netflix is you can totally have a cocktail and watch the movie because you don't have to drive
Absolutely.
anywhere. You just go to your couch and you can have
It's
this.
not
It's
$17 to get
it's
one
amazing.
either. It's great.
That's
It's
right.
great.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So your Netflix subscription may beg to differ there. But yeah, came out on Netflix 2022, directed by Guillermo del Toro, obviously, and Mark Gustafson, who is the animation director here. Because if you don't know, Guillermo del Toro's Pinocchio is a stop motion animated masterclass. It's gorgeous. This one stars David Bradley as Geppetto, the man that makes the little wooden boy. Ewan McGregor as Cricket, the heart and conscience of the wooden boy, and Gregory Mann is playing Pinocchio, the little wooden boy himself. So, as I mentioned, Michaela, this was nominated for Best Animated Feature Film. It won the Golden Globe. It was also nominated for a Golden Globe for Best Score and Best Original Song for Alexander Desplat. But Best Animated Feature Film. What do you think? We'll talk more about the films that are nominated. We have our own kind of darling in this category. I think I've seen all of these now. They're all really good. All of the animated films this year are excellent. So I definitely recommend checking them out. But I don't know. This to me feels like it has all of the makings of a Oscar winner to me.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's not my favorite of the ones that were nominated because as you said, we have our own favorites. And that's fine. But it's really hard to argue with this being kind of the winner. And for those of you who are fairly new to Drink the Movies, we do an Oscars You Pick 'em. And so you should definitely get on board for that because the winner gets some cool stuff. But we have a ongoing sort of competition between myself and Brian about who's going to win. I think the Oscars are definitely, I think Guillermo del Toro is definitely going to take this one home. But let's talk about the reasons why it was nominated in the first place. I mean, Guillermo del Toro is very famous for like really dark, visually stunning things, but I don't think he's ever done an animated feature film before. So I got to say, when I first saw that this was happening, I was intrigued, but also like, oh gosh, how dark and awful is he going to make the story? Because if you've seen Guillermo del Toro's work, he's done things that are very dark, right? He did Pan's Labyrinth, which is a really beautiful yet incredibly sad story. He did Nightmare Alley, which is a very dark tale, also visually very cool, but very dark. I remember seeing Mimic was one of the first things he ever did. It came out in like 1997, and that's like super terrifying and strange and just so with a movie that's supposed to be kind of a children's story, I was like, I was both intrigued and kind of hesitantly scared to watch it because you never know.
Yeah, that's fair for sure because Pinocchio, like you said, it does have kind of these darker leanings, darker tendencies. And Pinocchio was based on a book. It was actually a bunch of short stories that Carlo Collodi did back in the early 1880s, like 1883, had done these short stories, and then the character became so popular he continued on writing some more of those, and then ultimately collected them into a book that we now know as The Adventures of Pinocchio. But those stories, if you go back and read them, kind of like a lot of the fairy tales and things of that time, were pretty dark. Just in general, if you go back and read any of like those Disney-fied, fairy tales, those definitely have some darker undertones, and so does this. So yeah, when Guillermo del Toro said that he wanted to do kind of his adaptation of Pinocchio, he didn't really know how dark it was going to get. And this project was a long time in the works. He announced that he wanted to do it back in like 2009, and then it kind of went in and out of development, and then finally came out just this year, 2022. So let's talk about the movie a little bit. Michaela, we've got it broken down into four parts, and we're getting this thing started off with Geppetto. He is a woodworker. He's making all sorts of things. Looks like he makes some toys. He makes some shoes. He makes some clocks. He's making a crucifix for the church. He does it all. And he has the love of his life is his son, Carlo. And they're just going along. Carlo finds a nice looking pine cone. But, sometimes you have to find the most perfect pine cone, says Geppetto.
That's right. I love the symbolism behind the pine cone. His son Carlo actually finds this perfect pine cone, and he carries it with him because the pine cone is kind of a symbolism of life, and you want to find the most perfect thing. And Geppetto certainly feels that Carlo is the perfect son. And it's interesting, this time there's a shift in time, because I think like the original Pinocchio was set way before this, but this is set in Italy during World War I. And
Mm-hmm.
so Geppetto's working on creating this really beautiful crucifix cross depiction of Jesus on the cross for this church. And it is around this time that the city, the little town that they live in, is bombarded by this aerial bombing I guess it's the Austro-Hungarian forces. I don't know enough about the history to know kind of all the ins and outs of what that means, but there's a bombing, and they bomb the actual church, and Geppetto comes out of it unscathed, but his poor son Carlo is stuck in the church and ends up dying. But Geppetto ends up using this pine cone that he finds and burying it at Carlo's headstone. And over time, we see kind of that a tree begin to grow and become very tall as Geppetto kind of grieves for his son over this course of time. And you get the feeling watching this, again, it's absolutely beautiful, and visually, the stop motion photography is just stellar. But you get the feeling Geppetto was not a young man to begin with. He was not a young
Mm-hmm.
dad. And so now he's like freaking ancient. Carlo was kind of his reason and his purpose for what we felt like were his later years. And now he's incredibly old and sad. He doesn't do much woodworking anymore. The town kind of has kind of given him space in which to survive, but certainly he's not thriving, and he's certain and not moved on in any
Yeah.
way.
Yeah, absolutely. It's been some decades of grieving there, marked by the growth of that tree, and I really like kind of the inclusion of this pine cone being kind of this driving factor, and ultimately, spoiler warnings, what kind of cost Carlo his life is that errant bomb hits the church. But Pinocchio, in Italian, means pine cone or pine nut, so that's kind of where that comes from, and it's beautifully being narrated, kind of this entire story by Cricket. Ewan McGregor, who is absolutely excellent, kind of in this role, providing some a little bit of levity at times, but also has kind of this somberness about him. I mean, the man is Obi-Wan Kenobi. How can you argue with that? So we're carrying on here, as you mentioned, Geppetto. We are marching through time, kind of as we go. One night, Geppetto has kind of had his fill of this. The years and years of mourning, poor Carlo, have finally gotten the best of him. He has tried to remain faithful. He has tried to remain as a good man, but ultimately he lost his son. He was never kind of able to give up on that. And one night, one drunken night, Geppetto takes an axe out to that tree that stands there, kind of in symbolism of everything that he lost, and decides that he wants to do away with the tree. He's going to get rid of it. Maybe we can fashion that into some sort of Carlo replacement. I don't know. I don't know. I don't think that that's really what his kind of intentions were. I think it was more of just kind of a fit of rage, just angry at the world, which is understandable.
Yeah, completely. I mean, we learn from this anthropomorphic cricket, Sebastian J. Cricket. He was actually he was living in the tree when Geppetto was cutting it down, and as part of this comedic relief that has to happen throughout the film because it can be pretty heavy at times. I love that Sebastian J. Cricket never really dies. He can get
Mhm.
squashed and he can get he gets squashed a lot by things, right, falling on him, or but he ends up being like, oh, the pain of living. And of course it's in Ewan McGregor's like super rich loving voice. So he's kind of watching this unfold, and the room in which the cricket was living is now this space in Pinocchio's heart, like because he
Mhm.
makes this wooden boy. It's kind of a puppet. And he's very drunk. He passes out. He hasn't finished it yet. But he's done. And then this weird blue. Really, we got to talk about this blue fairy thing because it's this blue humanoid
It's
being that kind of
it's a
shows
wood
up.
sprite. It's a wood
Sorry,
sprite.
it's a wood sprite. But if you'll recall, like in some of the older different versions, it's a blue fairy that's like sweet and pretty and looks like, your mom, like just a very loving, like singing character. Yeah, this wood sprite, not that. Not a bad thing, just not that, right? The wood sprite's played by
Tilda Swinton plays the wood sprites, and yeah, it's less angelic, I guess, than
yeah.
what you would see like in the Walt Disney animated Pinocchio. It's more kind of ethereal and spiritual, I guess, looking. But this wood sprite comes into the house and basically has agreed to kind of bless this wooden puppet to bring it to life. And the wood sprite tasks Sebastian J. Cricket with kind of being the overseer, the caretaker, the conscious for this little wooden boy that's about to come to life. And in exchange, Cricket is going to get his wish now. And now Cricket at the offset, he's an aspiring writer. Just like all of us, wants to have a selling book. He thinks, okay, I can take care of Pinocchio. I'll get my book out there. It'll go on Oprah's must read list, and, and that'll do for me. But the wood sprite, agrees to bring Pinocchio to life, and that kind of gets us started. So now with those wood sprites bringing the wooden puppet Pinocchio to life, um, Geppetto is left with not a replacement for Carlo, not a stand-in for Carlo, but someone else to take care of and potentially be a father to, if he can wrap his head around that.
Right. And I think this is really tough. This is as a parent where I think it was really tough to watch because, at the beginning, he's saying things like, can you be like Carlo? Carlo was so nice and Carlo was so sweet. But Carlo and Pinocchio don't look the same because Pinocchio is made of wood. So things that matter to Carlo don't matter to Pinocchio and vice versa, right? You cannot replace another person with another person. Like you can't,
Mhm.
that's not how it works. And I think that while Geppetto's character knows that, he also doesn't really understand it. And certainly the town doesn't understand it because Pinocchio doesn't look the same and he doesn't act the same, and he's not the same person. And so, the town that extended so much grace in his grief and Geppetto's grief is now saying like, well, of course the priest is like, you could have been working on this beautiful crucifix and helping rebuild the church, but instead you make yourself a boy. Like, what are you doing?
Right.
And, unsurprising there, but, Geppetto, there's kind of this tentative relationship that starts to be built, and he, says you've got to start going to school. You're going to have to, do things that a real boy does. And Pinocchio is kind of he's caught in this space because he just wants to be loved and he wants to do the right thing. And he thinks that he wants to be like Carlo because everybody wants him to be like Carlo because Carlo left such a big hole. But at the same time, Pinocchio is not Carlo. He's his own kind of entity and own person. And the things, and so he's really struggling with what he should do versus who he really is.
Yeah, and there's this really kind of sweet line and sentiment where Geppetto has basically called out Pinocchio for not being enough like Carlo and being a burden on him. And then Pinocchio has kind of this, kind of back and forth with Cricket as to what is a burden and why is he a burden and why do people or fathers say things that they don't necessarily mean in the moment, right? You are saying things out of anger, not out of love, and only with time do you come to realize that. So in a way, Pinocchio is, like I said, he's not being a stand-in for Carlo, maybe even though that's what Geppetto really wishes that he was. But over time, they're both going to kind of be able to come to this understanding that, you can never have a stand-in for Carlo or insert child or pet or relative or friend here. It's but that doesn't make that person or experience any less important and special in the life. And that's kind of the lesson that we're going to be getting throughout this thing. And how do you learn that lesson, Michaela? You learn it by losing something that maybe you didn't even think that you wanted in the first place, right? He's kind of a nuisance. All he wants to do is drink hot chocolate, put his feet by the fire, which burn off, and then you have to make his feet like 100 times. So that's no good. That's no good. So what do? You have to go to school. Carlo went to school, you go to school, you be good at school. You also have the Podesta, who's like the mayor slash judge and ruler of this town. I guess Podesta is an Italian word for a kind of like caretaker of your community. I guess you're kind of the most important person, kind of like the mayor of your town, so to speak. And Podesta, he has his eye on Pinocchio. He said, a little weirded out by this little wooden boy, but send him to school, make him learn things. He can be an asset to our society, and maybe he can be an asset to Mussolini's Italy as those gears start working.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. There's this whole work boy camp thing that occurs. And so, which was a real thing for anybody that doesn't know. There was a whole, your boys would go and fight for Italy at like the age of 8. They would go and start learning how to do all those things, dealing with war during World War I, which was pretty much a downer. That whole part of this movie is a real downer. But yeah, the Podesta, he has his ideas of what he wants to do. And then we also meet this really awful character, Count Volpe, who is played by the amazing Christoph Waltz. Oh my gosh. Does he ever play a nice guy, Christoph Waltz? I mean, I don't know.
I don't think so.
He's amazing. It's like we need someone that is like inherently evil and yet has like a velvet voice. Got the guy for you, Christoph Waltz. One of the best actors in all of Germany. I think he's just amazing. Anyway, Count Volpe is like this aristocrat turned showman guy who's like, hey, I really like this. A puppet with no strings. Can he sing? Can he dance? I bet we could take this on the road and we can make a ton of money. And as we all know, Geppetto hasn't been working really a lot for the last 20 years. So, Pinocchio is caught because he wants to be helpful. He just wants to be useful to his dad. And he thinks that if he's useful enough to his dad, then his dad will love him.
Count Volpe really kind of preys on Pinocchio, right? He can see that Pinocchio is kind of wide-eyed and starstruck by this. He's a little kid, of course, so he loves the attention and things like that. He's playing out as a real little boy would be. And then Pinocchio sees this as potentially an opportunity to make some money for the family, right? He agrees to do it. He'll be the headliner of this kind of traveling circus sort of a show as long as you send my share of the money back to my dad, Geppetto. Maybe that will make me be not a burden. anymore, as that theme kind of keeps carrying on through this thing, as Pinocchio is really just trying to do his best so that Geppetto sees him as not a hindrance anymore.
Right, right. And I think that whole idea that is played out in this kind of cartoon is what makes it so special, because while he is gone, while Pinocchio is gone, Geppetto immediately feels horrible. He doesn't know where he is, and he knows that he's not with the work camps. So the Podesta's all upset because he can't find him. But he's like, where did he go? And of course, Count Volpe didn't send any money, so he doesn't send any word saying, this is where your son is. And so Geppetto kind of starts to go on this search, and he feels very guilty. And I think he even says, why did I say these things? Why did I do these things? And it goes back to that whole theme of, when you, as a parent, you'll say things that you don't really mean, but they have this lasting effect on both the child that you're saying it to, and also yourself, because now that you didn't mean those things, that you were angry, and you're saying it to someone who is going to internalize it, and then you are internalizing it yourself later. And so it's just a kind of a bunch of parental regret that we see in this film. At least I saw, because I'm a parent and I say things I regret all the time. So so it's this part of the film was really tough, because Geppetto's kind of one step behind Pinocchio every time, and it's a really beautiful montage. There's this one scene where it's raining and he's pulling down old posters, and he sees that his he's uncovering Mussolini posters, seeing that his son had been here just the week before. It looks like maybe just a couple of days before. And so he's kind of on his heels, on Count Volpe's heels, but he never quite gets to Pinocchio in time. And that part's really sad.
Yeah, that's right. Because as kind of the story is playing out of, Pinocchio's, journey of him not wanting to be, a burden to his father, he's not able to see that, Geppetto has, really started to take remorse and is traveling, with Cricket, trying to find where Pinocchio is going as they're traveling, kind of across the Italian countryside, trying to catch up with this carnival. But the carnival makes its final stop. They're going to be performing for Mussolini, who, Pinocchio does the best thing ever. Basically, tells Mussolini what a giant turd he is, and indeed, good job on you, Pinocchio. I really like, he kind of choreographs this with Spazzatura, who is the little monkey in the sideshow there with Count Volpe. The Spazzatura is voiced by Kate Blanchett, of all people. Spazzatura can only really speak through these other puppets, so it's really kind of neat to see Pinocchio interacting with these other puppets. The Spazzatura is kind of controlling and talking to him through that way. But yeah, we have kind of this last show in front of Mussolini. It doesn't go that good. Mussolini says, "I don't like that puppet. Shoot it." So they do, and we get kind of our first of these little sections here that I really like, that are handled very differently, kind of in all of the Pinocchio tellings. But basically, Pinocchio is sent off to, I don't know, the River Styx or wherever he's going, the afterlife, basically. And you have these creepy rabbits that are just there. They're playing poker, but Pinocchio can't die. He's not a real boy, right? He is a little wooden boy. And we meet, I don't even, who plays the...
It's Tilda Swinton again.
Oh,
it's the sister of the blue, weird looking wood sprite,
of the wood
that you
sprite.
called it. Now it's not a wood sprite. It's like the death wood sprite.
Now it's the death sprite. Yeah, but she's there, and she's kind of imparting important lessons to Pinocchio too. Like, this section could be very scary, and if you think Guillermo del Toro is going to send a little wooden boy to to kind of this purgatory state, you'd think that it would be pretty scary. And visually it's a little bit scary, but really the lessons are kind of uplifting in a way. Almost, she's teaching Pinocchio the importance of, you are going to outlive all of these people, but every time you die, you lose a little bit more time with them. So that's really kind of the important lesson. You need to do good things, and you need to be nice to people, and you need to listen, and do all of those things, all of those lessons as little kids were taught, right? Because basically what she's saying is you get a limited amount of time with these people, and every time
Right.
you don't you know follow the rules, so to speak, you're losing a little bit of that time. And I really like kind of these sections, not necessarily for the darker tone, but just in kind of that lesson that she's imparting to Pinocchio, that I think you could only get maybe this way if you're a little wooden boy. I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah, maybe. I mean, at first it doesn't really bother him that he's going to die, that he can die multiple times. Cause at first he's only gone for maybe a couple of minutes,
Mhm.
and he is kind of reanimated, and his father is finally there and is like, oh, you're okay. And it's fine. And all is well. I mean, I agree with you. I love his performance for Benito Mussolini. I think that only it's so rich that like he wants to talk about bodily functions just like every other boy who decide once they discover the way farts work and poop works, they're like, I want to sing about farts and poops all day. And so he likened Mussolini to just a giant turd. It's great. I thought that this death part was really probably my favorite part of the whole of the first part of the film, because she tries to explain to him that he's going to lose that time, but like most things when you're young and someone is trying to tell you and give you some piece of advice and some wisdom, you're like, it's fine, it's only going to cost me 5 minutes now. And it comes back to haunt him, right? And I love when he dies in multiple times throughout the film, he ends up going back, and the rabbits are like, he's back. Well, go through that door and flip over one of the hourglasses. Let's see how long you're going to be here for.
Yep.
Um,
Yeah, that's right. And as he kind of makes his way through the story, and he gets kind of put up against that final death, as Cricket and Geppetto are pursuing Pinocchio, of course, they get lost at sea and swallowed by the whale, or this big sea monster, kind of in this telling. And Pinocchio is just able to find them through some happenstance. You mentioned, Michaela, kind of these Mussolini boys camp for Italian fascist youth. That's where Pinocchio goes because they think that he could be a super soldier. They know now that Pinocchio can't die. He's made of wood. He can do all of these things. He's never going to get tired. He could be the perfect little soldier. But Pinocchio is not into that life because he says, my dad Geppetto, he told me that wars are bad and nothing good comes from them. Why do I want to do this? But some of the most kind of uh, I don't want to say breathtaking because there's a lot of really neat visual stuff that goes on in this movie, but just from a technical standpoint, you get this kind of scene at this camp where the boys are playing this kind of makeshift little war paintball match kind of a thing. And you see, I've seen a lot of stop motion animation, things like that. But this particular scene, I mean, there's, I don't know, 20 or 30 of these kids running around. It's like a full blown war that's all stop animated, and it looks like unbelievable. Like I can't even fathom the thousands of man hours that it took for, the animators to get this thing
yeah.
to do that. That's
Yeah,
unreal.
the choreography and the orchestrating of all of these moving parts is just mind blowing. And that's why it was so neat to see, because we've seen some really great animated films this year. I mean, like we've talked about, all of the other nominated films are all wonderful in their own right. I mean, but this one really was very special in the look and feel, and really the set direction, because it is stop motion photography, you really had to build out all of that stuff rather than
Mhm.
just paint it. And I don't mean to trivialize all kind of the artistry behind some of the other animated films, but this was just very different. And I love that we meet again. We finally meet Candlewick and get to know him a little better. Candlewick's possessed his son, and he's like, oh, he's also terrified of disappointing his father. There's a lot of like, I don't want my father to not love me in this film.
Mhm.
And maybe this is a good father son movie for any of you folks out there. They materialize and manifest in very different ways. But Candlewick is like, look, if I can just be the perfect soldier like you, Pinocchio, if I could just do what you do, then maybe my dad will love me. But he kind of gets uh, he gets in trouble when Candlewick kind of refuses to shoot Pinocchio, right?
Hmm.
He stands up to his father, and then you have that whole bombing scene that you talked about where there's a bunch of stuff, and Podesta's killed, and Candlewick is finally free of his dad's overbearingness, but also he's really sad. I mean, it's a lot of big emotions for this being like a children's story. A lot of
That's
big
right.
grown up kind of emotions.
Yeah, definitely. It carries a lot of weight through those stop motion animated puppets there, and it's very beautiful. But yeah, Pinocchio ends up having to kind of flee the section as kind of everyone turns on him there as him and Candlewick decide to tie that match, and Candlewick refuses to shoot him. So as Pinocchio is fleeing, he ends up himself in the ocean, which is very scary because there's a lot of crazy water mines there because now we are getting into World War II territory here. So you have all that going on, and Pinocchio ends up being swallowed by this same giant sea monster who's very creepy looking. I really like kind of the design of this monster, and then like the inside of the monster is just absolutely ridiculous, right? Because the boat's in there. There's like a fully like functioning like full size lighthouse inside of this monster. It's pretty ridiculous, but pretty great. But the good news is, despite being swallowed by a monster, you are reunited with your dad and little cricket there. So that's good. You're finally able to, kind of say you're sorry to your dad, and your dad is able to say that he's sorry to you. Kind of all of these lessons just really kind of mesh up here at the end, and that spawns that final kind of death scene for Pinocchio. He, gets swallowed by this whale. He detonates this mine inside of it in an effort to, help Geppetto and Cricket get away, but he knows in the explosion that Geppetto is not going to make it unless Pinocchio can come back to life quickly. But by this time, he's already used up a lot of those sand. The
Hourglass.
hourglass, yeah, the hourglasses are about gone. So he has kind of his final confrontation with this afterlife sprite, and Pinocchio gets to make a decision.
Yeah, he has to decide. He wants to be sent back early, and this death sprite, is warning him that, hey, if you do that, um, you're going to become mortal and you're going to end up dying. And it's a choice that you've got to make, so you won't live forever. But Pinocchio, he's really resolute to save his dad, so he breaks the hourglass. And I love the way they do that because he kind of sinks into this sandy. The sand is black, which also is creepy. It's really
Mhm.
creepy. But he breaks the hourglass, and then it kind of sucks him down the way that it has been, but the hourglass sand becomes the bigger sand, and it's just really a visual treat to see. But he ends up trying to save his father, and he gets his father kind of up. You see this really beautiful kind of underwater montage of him kind of propping his father up so he can get air, but unfortunately Pinocchio ends up drowning in the process. So his father lives, but he can't bring Pinocchio back to life because Pinocchio has made the choice to be mortal. And Geppetto is then completely broken and really upset, realizing that he's not coming back. They've waited the 5, 10, 30 minutes that it's
Yeah.
taken in the past, and it's not the same now. And it's really the lowest of the low for this film. You really are kind of like, how is the, and of course, at this point, I'm very angry at Guillermo del Toro because once again, he has ripped my heart out of my body, and I'm really upset about it.
Yeah, he definitely has, and that particular scene, I really find hard to watch as Pinocchio, gives up his life basically to go back and save Geppetto, and you see him kind of swimming there. But of course, he had just been in an explosion, so like his arm is missing and one of his legs is missing, and he's just struggling to try to get him back up there. And but yeah, he's able to get Geppetto up onto the sand. Geppetto lives just in time to see Pinocchio lose his life there, and kind of that in that person exchange that Pinocchio has made with the death sprite, I guess. And it's really sad and emotional because Geppetto never got to tell Pinocchio that he didn't mean all of those bad things, and Pinocchio now has sacrificed himself for Geppetto. So it's really tough. You're seeing Geppetto kind of live out this loss of a son all over again. But luckily we have a trick up our sleeve by the way of
Sebastian J.
So
Cricket.
Sebastian J. Cricket, who has kept his wish in reserve, he thinks he has done a suitable job of being Pinocchio's conscious and decision making gauge and all that things. So when the wood sprite returns to, I guess, collect Pinocchio to take him to the afterlife, Sebastian stands up and says, I have done all of these things. I have tried my best, and sometimes your best is as best as you can do. And that is a lesson that we've learned a lot of times. Sebastian even says, Pinocchio taught it to me. Well, I taught it to Pinocchio and he taught it to me, which is pretty funny. But that wish is going to be granted. Thank you, Wood Sprite, for that. She is able to bring Pinocchio back to life. But now Pinocchio knows he's a real boy now, but he's still made of wood. So have to go through life. You get one more shot at this thing. But unfortunately, and probably the most heartbreaking of all of this, and I mean it's heartbreaking in a way because it's very sad because Pinocchio can't grow old. So he's going to, kind of lose these people that he's grown so fond of. But all is good because he still has some years with these people to live and laugh and love, and that is at the end of the day, that's all you can do. That is what our Death Sprite tried to teach us, right? Don't waste your time with the people that you love.
That's right. Because you don't have a lot of sand, no matter what color it is. It could be black, creepy sand. It could be, yeah, but you have a finite amount. Finite amount. And yeah, and that's kind of how this ends, right? You have this really beautiful scene where Carlo's gravestone has now Geppetto's next to it because it's been some years, and then of course. Uh, Spazzatura, which is the really cool monkey. Spazzatura has come to our side. He's friends. He's a member of the family now. He passes on, and so there's like a little headstone for him. And then we see as the rolling credits that even Sebastian J. Cricket finally dies. He finally dies, and he wasn't smushed. He died of like a heart attack or something. We don't know what happened, but it was a natural cause. And he's
Old
like,
cricket age.
he's old cricket age, and he is talking with the rabbits while they're playing poker, and he's telling this story to them because they're doubtlessly wondering where the heck Pinocchio's been, because he kept coming in and leaving, and he hadn't been in a while. And so Sebastian is the one who's regaling them with this story, and it's kind of coming full circle around. Hey, life is a really beautiful thing, and you've got to really love the ones around you when you have them around you, because you won't always. And yeah, and that's how it ends.
And that's how it ends. There have been a lot of life lessons taught to us by Guillermo del Toro in his retelling of Pinocchio. So, Michaela, let's talk a little bit about this. As I mentioned, I watched this back, I think, on the day that it came out or the day after it came out. I was really excited for it as a big fan of Guillermo del Toro's films and kind of his tellings. I really like stop motion animation, so I was interested to see how great it would look because by all accounts it was going to look great, and by all accounts it looks even better than you probably would have imagined. And I think that really makes a good argument for watching this twice, because the first time you're going to be watching it saying, how did they do that? How does that look so good? What are all of these things? How did they build out these sets? How did they get cricket to look so small? All those things. And you can also watch a documentary about all that stuff on Netflix. But I think the first time you're just kind of taking it in, you're kind of sucked into this world visually, you're seeing all of the characters and things. But I think really on the rewatch, what I picked up on a lot of myself when you and I watched this, just last week to get ready for the podcast, was how much stuff there is story wise and lesson wise going on, because kind of on its surface, it's this father son tale and, making sure that, you don't say things that, you're going to regret later, and trying to not be a burden. We mentioned that as kind of this kind of recurring theme of that, but really there's a lot, and you hit on some of it with Candlewick and his father and the lessons we're learning from cricket kind of throughout this thing as he's narrating it. But I don't know, Michaela, you had the chance to see it once. What were your kind of initial impressions? I guess you talked a little bit about that at the top, but what were your kind of takeaways of this one?
Yeah, by the end of the story, it's hard to argue. I mean, this film is pretty It's really beautifully balanced, like you said. It's got everything that something that's nominated for Best Picture in general would have, right? It's got amazing characterization. The visuals are stunning. The story is great. The script is beautiful. There's a lot of really, it's a great balance. It's got some funny parts. It's got some really heartbreaking parts. It really does what I love a film to do, which is change the way I think about things, right? This, I think of my son differently that after seeing this film. I think of my son's father differently after seeing this film. I think of my dad differently after seeing this film. And so it's all of that is something that I feel is characteristic of a great film. And so it really did do all of that. I was really glad it wasn't super dark. I was able to show this to my son shortly after we watched it, and we watched it together. And my son really liked it. And we, of course, he loved the poop song, as most 8-year-old boys probably do. So I think he'll get some of the layers to this as he watches it when he gets older. But I did
Mhm.
like that this was something that was, as Guillermo himself said, you actually can watch this with your kid. You're just going to have to actually talk to him about it. And imagine that. Imagine having to talk to your kid about something that you watch. So yeah, I mean, I think that this definitely, I'm going to call it now when we do the You Pick 'em. I think this is probably going to win Best
Mhm.
Animated Film for all the reasons that we've discussed. It's interesting to me because Guillermo del Toro has said that this is his passion project, right? He was in an interview talking about how, animated films and Pinocchio in general just meant so much to him growing up.
Mhm.
Um, so I really love that he was able to live that and create a story for that. And I hope that it did all the things that he wanted it to do, because he should be really proud of it. It's a pretty amazing work of art.
Yeah, it's really kind of breathtaking sight to be seen for sure. And I really liked kind of the direction that this went, setting it, kind of in this just pre-World War II kind of fascist uprising, and you're kind of able to play on those tones as well. I thought was really interesting in terms of setting the story and how you wanted to tell Pinocchio's story, because as we mentioned, this was a book from the 1800s, but there have been, I don't know, like a thousand different different iterations of Pinocchio, the Disney one being probably the most famous and well known of all of those, but there have been a lot of these, and kind of everyone's interpretations of Pinocchio are a little bit different, right? Like sometimes Pinocchio is more of like this like outsider, like fringe kind of thing because he's not the same as everyone else. Sometimes it's more fantastical, and kind of it really plays off more of his lesson of telling a lie and making his nose grow. It's a little bit more kind of fantasy and fantastical story there, but kind of this one I think is a little bit more somber in its telling. Like Pinocchio wasn't viewed as different so much because he was a little wooden boy. He was viewed that way because in all of the ways he was different from Carlo. And I thought that
Right.
that was a really interesting kind of way to frame it there with the backdrop of the impending Second World War. So I don't know. It's really good. Definitely worth a watch if you have that Netflix subscription. You're going to want to make sure you get it watched, especially as we get into our Oscar time. So speaking of Oscars, Michaela, we are doing over on our Patreon some mini bonus episodes for the Best Picture nominees. We've got two of them out so far. Look for a couple of those each week as we make our way to Oscars. We're going to get one for all 10, and that's the best way to get some bonus Oscar coverage over on our Patreon. It's patreon.com/drink the movies. You can get signed up there for extra bonus stuff and all sorts of fun stuff. And make sure you're following along on our Discord because we're talking about these movies. We'll be doing some Oscar talking over there, maybe some watch along type stuff. I don't know. So make sure you get checked out into the Discord. That link is available on any of our social medias. So at Drink the Movies on Instagram, Twitter, and Hive, and Facebook.com/Drink the Movies. That's where you're going to want to go and check in on all the stuff we've got going on. And Michaela, what would really be helpful as we make our way to award season is giving us an award of 5-star review if you feel so inclined. Where can people do that?
You can find us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, Good Pods, anywhere where Anchor podcasts are distributed. We do 2 drops a week, not counting any of our Patreon stuff. And so if you like what you're hearing, leave us a review, tell your friends. Um, we are really excited about all the things that we're going to be doing for Oscar season. It's a really cool time to be doing the jobs that we're doing. I can't believe I wake up every morning and I'm so grateful that we get to talk about movies and drink all the time. It's great. So join us. You can like us, you can subscribe, you can leave us 5-star reviews. It really helps us get all the Drink the Movie stuff out there, and which is really great during this time of year. So we appreciate it.
No, that's right, absolutely. And make sure you mix up one of these Pinocchio cocktails because it was a really delicious one of my favorites that we've done here on the show. So make sure you check into that and check out the website, drinkthemovies.com, for pictures of ours and all of that good stuff. But Michaela, we have talked about Pinocchio now. We've got a couple more, I think you do, for your animated film watching. All in all, we have a bunch more movies to get to watching. So why don't we do that? Let's mix up another cocktail. We'll go see if we can check off a few more Oscar contenders, and we'll be back to talk to everyone next time on
Drink
Drink the
the Movies.
Movies. Ciao, Papa.